Friends, welcome to BankEXamCafe, and in today's episode we are going to start with the new chapter, that is lines and angles. And today we are going to see the very basic terms and the definitions that we have studied in the lower classes, that is in 6th standard, 7th standard and 8th standard, and which are very important to solve the questions which are in the chapter lines and angles. So friends, here the most basic terms and definition that you have studied right from the 6th standard is, first one is a line. I am not going into detail because I know you know everything about these basic terms, but I am just revising it. So line which has no endpoints, that you have studied. Then ray is what? It has one end point, and a line segment has two end points. And similarly you have studied the definition of a point. That point is nothing but a dot which has no dimension. Point is a dot which has no dimension. So we know that the line has no end point. It means it extends to the both side infinitely. Ray has one end point, and it means it extends to the other side infinitely, and the line segment has two end points. So on both ends it has a end point and it doesn't extend infinitely on the both side. Now the next terms that you have studied in the lower classes are collinear points. Collinear points means what? The three or more points. Correct? Three or more points that lie on the same line are called as the collinear points. And definitely non-collinear point means what? It is the three or more points that do not lie on the same line. These are the 3 points that do not lie on the same line. So if you join this, it will not form a straight line, and therefore we call such points as the non-collinear points. So we know that about collinear points and the non-collinear points. Now we will just go through the types of the angles, and these terms are very important for the class 9. So first one that you have studied is a acute angle. You know very well. Can anyone tell me what is the acute angle? Yes, write in a description box that what is acute angle. An angle whose measure is less than 90 degree. Whose measure is less than 90 degree, but it should be greater than 0 degree, and then we call that angle as the acute angle. Then we have studied about the obtuse angle. What is obtuse angle? An angle whose measure is greater than 90 degree, whose measure is greater than 90 degree but less than 180 degree. Greater than 90 degree but less than 180 degree. Such angles we call as the obtuse angle. And the next we have studied, that is a right angle. What is right angle? An angle whose measure is 90 degree is called as the right angle. So if the measure of the angle is 90 degree, we call it as a right angle. If the measure is greater than 90 degree and less than 180 degree, that we call it as obtuse angle. And the angle whose measure is less than 90 degree but greater than 0 degree is called as an acute angle. Now the next is straight angle. Straight angle means the angle between the two arms is 180 degree, then we call it as a straight angle. So this is the example of straight angle, this is the example of straight angle, this is the example of straight angle, and this is also the example of straight angle, because if you take this as the one arm of the angle and this as the another arm of the angle, then the angle between these two arms is 180 degree, and therefore we call it as a straight angle. So the angle whose measure is 180 degree is called as a straight angle. Now we have also studied in the lower classes that what are reflex angles. What is the reflex angle? The reflex angle is that an angle whose measure is greater than 180 degrees. An angle whose measure is greater than 180 degree but less than 360 degree is called as an reflex angle. So this is the measure of the angle. So this is 240 degree, 44 degree. So it is greater than 180 degree but less than 360 degree. So we will call this as the reflex angle. Similarly, this angle is 248 degree and therefore we will call it as a reflex angle. This angle is 266 degree. So it is greater than 180 degree and less than 360 degree, and therefore we call it as a reflex angle. Similarly, this is a reflex angle and this is also a reflex angle. Now here, this is the most important adjacent angle. Try to understand it. Adjacent angle that we have studied in the lower classes also, but this is very, very important to understand. So I will go little bit in detail. So adjacent angles means what? The two neighboring angles. Correct? The very simple definition that two neighboring, अड़ोस पड़ोस के जो angle है उसको हम कहेंगे कि, but it has the condition that the two angles should have a common vertex and a common arm. Correct? And a common arm. This is called as the arm of the angle. This is also called as the arm of the angle, and this is also called as the arm of the angle. So these arms that meet at one point, let that point be A. So this we call as a vertex. This point is called as a vertex. So for this angle, A is a vertex, and this angle A is the vertex, and therefore these two angles, angle 1 and angle 2, have a common vertex, and also this angle has this A. Suppose this B point is there, then AB is a common arm to angle 1 as well as to angle 2, and such angle we call these angles as the adjacent angles. Now see here the second figure. In the second figure, let this be angle 1 and this be angle 2. And so here what you see that these two angles seems to be neighboring, but not exactly the neighbors. Here why? Even though suppose this point is A, so the vertex is common. So for angle 1, A is the vertex, and for angle 2 also A is the vertex. The vertex is common but the arms are different. This is the arm of angle 1 and this is the arm of the angle 2, and so these arms are different, that are not common. They do not share the common arm, and therefore we do not call such angles as the adjacent angles. Similarly, see here, this angle, let I denote it by 1. And this angle I denote it by 2. Now here this angle 1 and 2, can you call this as the adjacent angles? Apply all the conditions and tell me whether we can call these two angles as the adjacent angles or not. See, here the angle 1 has vertex A, and even the angle 2 has vertex A, so it has a common vertex. Correct? It has a common vertex. Correct? The first condition is satisfied. Now I give the names to the arms A, B, this is C and this is D. Now this triangle, angle A, angle 1, correct? BA is the vertex, BA is a arm, and for this angle 2 also BA is a arm. So we can say that BA is an arm common to angle 1 and angle 2, and therefore we say that it has a common arm, and so by the definition you will say that these two are the adjacent angles, but it is not so because these two angles are overlapping. So the third condition is that it should not be, angles should not be overlapping. Correct? So here the three conditions we have seen, that it should have common vertex, it should have common arms, and it should not be overlapping. Now see this fourth situation. In this fourth situation, what we see, this is the angle 1 and let this be the angle 2. Correct? It has this common arm. This is the common arm, but the vertex of angle 2 is this and the vertex of angle 1 is this. So the vertices are not common, and therefore we cannot say that this angle 1 and angle 2 are adjacent angles. These are not adjacent angles because the vertices are not common. Both are not sharing the common vertex. So this is the very important to understand. Now see the next. Next is that linear pair. Linear pair means what? It is a pair of adjacent angles. So all the properties of the adjacent angles will be applicable here. Correct? So linear pair is what? It is a pair, means the two angles. Correct? It is a pair of adjacent angles. So it is a pair of adjacent angles. So all the properties of the adjacent angle should be applicable here, that it should have a common arm, it should have a common vertex, and both the angles should not be overlapping. Correct? So if these three conditions are satisfied, then we can say that it is a pair of the so it is a pair of the adjacent angles, and because all the three conditions are applied here, satisfied by this pair. But the thing is that for the linear pair, the sum of these two angles should be 180 degree. If the sum of these two angles is 180 degree, then we call it as a linear pair. So first condition is that it should be the pair of adjacent angles, and the second condition is that the sum of that two angles should be 180 degrees. Correct? Then what are complementary angles? The next is what? Complementary angles. Complementary angles are the angles whose sum is what? 90 degree. So the first condition applied, that the pair of angles should be adjacent angles, and the second condition is that the sum of that two angles should be 90 degree, then we call it as the complementary angle. Here we see that these two angles are the adjacent angles because it has a common arm, it has a common vertex, and it has one common arm, and therefore this is a pair of the adjacent angles. First condition is satisfied. This is 60 degree, this is 30 degree, and so the sum is 90 degree. The second condition is applied, and therefore we can say that this is a pair of complementary angles. Now see this condition. Here, though the sum of these two angles is 90 degree, second condition is applied, but the first condition is not applied because these are not the adjacent angles, and therefore we cannot call it as the complementary angles. Now the next is what? Vertically opposite angles. Correct? If two line segments intersect each other, then this angle and this angle will be called as the vertically opposite angle. So angle 1 and 2 is called as the vertically opposite angle, and angle 3 and angle 4 are called as the vertically opposite angles, and these vertically opposite angles are always equal. So here we can say that angle 1 is equal to angle 2 and angle 3 is equal to angle 4. So friends, here we have seen all the basic terms and definitions of the angles, lines, and which are essential and necessary for solving the questions of the chapter lines and angles. Now here we will stop, and I hope you must have enjoyed this video. If yes, please like the video, share it with your friends, and do not forget to subscribe the channel. Thank you very much for watching this video.